right. Hi, welcome to the Integral Leadership in Action, ILiA Creative Writer Support Pod. We are very excited on this Monday, March 10th. This is the last Creative Writer Support Pod before our big embodied integral event that everyone is so excited. Everyone in the world is so excited about. We can't wait to go and have fun and do all kinds of fun things today. But today we're actually going to be going over to Karen Voorhees, who's going to share her latest work with us and work in progress. And she's writing an integral novel, which I think a lot about and wonder what does it mean exactly. So Karen, please take it away and share with us what's going on with you.
Okay, what's going on with me is actually way beyond my conscious control, but hey, I try to cooperate with the flow of the universe here. I have an integral novel in progress. It's a project that began either 10 years ago or 30 years ago, depending on how you count it. I'd like to start by saying a little bit about my personal background. I'm Karen Voorhees. I thought I was going to spend my life being a university professor teaching about the European Middle Ages. I did get my PhD and then I bailed out of academia because about the time I was finishing my PhD, I started meditating. I did not find my spiritual path. It found me, hit me upside the head with a 2x4. And once I started meditating seriously, I realized that there are dimensions of the good, the true, and the beautiful that far transcend the intellect. So I kind of wondered, why am I wasting my time on this intellectual stuff? When I spent 3 years researching whether this manuscript was made over here and brought over here or made over here and brought over there, when I could cultivate states of consciousness where I can look into the collective consciousness and see it. But, girls got to earn an honest living. But there, so many synchronicities happened. I ended up marrying a doctor, gleefully bailing out of academia, which is a very good thing because deconstructionism had just started its hostile takeover of the humanities. So I spent the 4 decades since then, mostly devoted to my spiritual path, the community. I ended up holding positions of responsibility in my spiritual path. That started in 1981. And then in 1982, I started reading Ken Wilber. As a cultural historian, when I read Up from Eden, that was like Newton's 3 laws of motion, making sense of all the movements of the planets that people had been charting for thousands of years. And suddenly everything I already knew made so much more sense. So I've been reading Ken Wilber since 1982, and side by side with my spiritual path, they've been very powerful correctives on each other, so to speak. So I think of my spiritual path and Ken Wilber as the twin tracks down which the choo-choo train of my life has been running since the early 80s. So boiling it down, I like big pictures. I'm a historian. I like big pictures. The bigger, the better. And I am thrilled with Ken Wilber's Aqual meta model because it's the biggest. It doesn't get bigger than that. So behind my novel, which landed on me in the early 90s, I'd like to say, sort of bridge to that by talking about the underlying passion and purpose behind my project. One effect of being a cultural historian who likes big pictures is that I have, thanks to Ken Wilber, a very clear sense of an evolutionary trajectory that makes sense of current events. Big sense. Here's the soundbite version. Right now, we collectively are passing through a major phase change, a transition into a whole next new emergent order of complexity on this planet. The planetary collective aspect of Wilber's second tier. We are transitioning into Wilber's second tier. These transitions are not easy. In the world of physics, they're phase changes, periods of great turbulence between 2 periods of more stability. In biological evolution, these are, gosh, what's the term? I knew it this morning. Punctuated equilibrium. In transitions in human societies, they tend to be dark ages, periods of horrific turbulence, and then the next new order of complexity in human society emerges. This is going up the ages. So I maintain that the apocalyptic turbulence that dominates our headlines today repeats a cycle that we human beings have been through 6 times in our history as a species. These cycles of emergence map coherently onto the many corresponding cycles of emergence in the history of this planet and indeed of the universe itself. And here's where I'll mention my graph. My chart up the ages maps this. So I agree with Ken Wilber and many, many others. We are in the throes of manifesting a second-tier integral world. We're going through the birth canal. Turbulent phase changes are an integral part of the process of manifesting new world orders. And a lot of other people besides me are using the metaphor of a birth. The contractions that push the fetus out from the womb into the world are intense and painful. This is what we're in, it's getting more and more painful, right? The next new world order is in the process of being born. That's my vision. For this, among other reasons, I have become eagerly involved in the integral community around Ken Wilber over the last 10 years. I have not ever found anywhere a better cognitive map to guide us than Wilber's Aqua meta theory. And besides, I'm having a lot of fun hanging out with all you wonderful, crazy people who are crazy the same way I'm crazy. So I just want to reinforce, I am so delighted to see integral creatives reaching out to each other, networking, building networks of networks, supporting and empowering each other. Yes. Okay, back to my main point here. In these later decades of my embodied life, creative writing has become my primary mode of expressing my creativity, my visions, and my hope for a beautiful, integral, second-tier future for us and our planet. The specific project I'm presenting today is my integral novel in progress. Its title is Shadow of the Earth. The genre is historical fantasy, which is called romantasy these days. It's set 11,000 years ago at the dawn of agriculture, when humanity was moving from purple magenta hunter-gathering into red for the very first time ever. This coincides with the very beginning of agriculture. First time on Earth. My quick pitch goes like this. Think Clan of the Cave Bear meets Cloud Atlas with some shades of gray. My elevator pitch so far, and I will be moderating this in later drafts, I'm sure, but so far the elevator pitch goes like this. A Stone Age priestess learns the high cost of love when her people call on her to go to the gods for them as a human sacrifice. Does she love her frightened people enough to die for them? Does she love them enough to forgive them when things go horribly sideways? So my goal is a novel that has mass market appeal, but whose deep structure will be thoroughly integral, even Wilberian. I hope that most of the people who I hope will read it will enjoy it as a good summer read. Discerning readers will see the very, very close parallels with our apocalyptic current events. There's a big story there that I don't have time to go into there today, but involves, never mind, another time. It involves Donald Trump. The villain of my novel turns out to be Donald Trump, and I didn't intend it, but my story just developed that way, but that's a whole other subject. The climax of the novel will present my personal vision of our possible integral future. And as I said, the deep structure will be integral, meaning that mainstream readers, I hope, will be able to absorb the integral vision by osmosis without having to sit down and learn a lot of technical jargon. I think it's high time for our integral vision to start moving out of our beautiful ghetto into the wider world. The fields of the arts and entertainment and popular culture will need to play a role in this. The world needs our vision. So anything any of us do to bring this out in our lives and our interactions with the world is helping us move into our brighter future. If I were to sum up the core drive behind my novel, it would be this. Let's tell some beautiful stories about our possible future. And some of you have heard me say this before in other venues. It matters less to me that my story is one that it goes big time. What matters to me is as collectively getting the message out. it doesn't matter who does or doesn't score it big time in the mainstream. But I think my story has some potential to go mainstream, and my timeline allows me to go a little bit into the story itself here. The story starts with a bang. The protagonist, High Priestess Embe, dies very dramatically on page 3. Most of the rest of the novel, which will take 2 volumes, so it's like 2 novels, it will tell her life story in the context of her past life review from the astral plane, what I think Wilber would call the low subtle plane. I imagine it as existing in 4 dimensions. William, this is familiar territory to you. I'm having a lot of fun with this part. In the Earth-based sections which follow Embe's embodied life story, there will be explicit sex and explicit violence, including some sexual violence. This is, after all, set 11,000 years ago at the dawn of Red, just as Red was emerging as its own specific level. The bad guy is a proto-warlord. Oh boy, lots of drama. If my finished novel does have mass market appeal, it will probably be compared with Girl with a Dragon Tattoo and Shades of Grey. It does get that intense. But as I said, the deep structure will be integral. Also, I hope and intend the spirituality will be even more startling than the sex and violence. Moi, ha, ha. So, and I still have a little time. How I came to attempt this project at all. In the chat box, I've posted my vestigial website, which Bet has helped me with so much. Thank you, Bet. 2 of the 4 essays on that are very relevant to well, 3 of them are very relevant to the novel. The first essay, which is not at all what I expected, tells how I came to write this novel. In the context of, no kidding, what landed on me as a past life recall. You read the article, it's short, if you want to hear how it happened. But basically, I spent 3 days after I tried Jungian active imagination technique and got a past life recall, and spent 3 days shivering in the corner of my house, unpacking the story that kind of landed kind of all in one squirt, like a zip file. It's just more like being struck by lightning. Let me read one paragraph from that essay, not at all what I expected. This summarizes Embe's life. Born about 11,000 years ago in Asia Minor and raised to be a tribal shaman, Embe spent her life helping the tribes in her region come together around this newfangled, revolutionary technology of farming that was changing everything. When a total lunar eclipse passed over the region, her terrified people begged her to go to the gods for them as a human sacrifice. She agreed for reasons of her own. The ceremony was meant to be sacred and healing, bringing people together, but her political enemy, the warlord Batumavir, sabotaged it. Things went horribly sideways. So after I spent 3 days shivering in a corner, just kind of getting all this in, I wrote a 5-page outline of Embe's life. I put it away. Life went back to normal. I continued taking on more and more organizational responsibilities for my guru during the 90s. Into the 2000s, kept on reading Ken Wilber. When Sex, Ecology, Spirituality came out in 1995, I devoured it. I've still got it with pencils and marks and pads and notes and things. Fast forward to 2015, when it became clear that I needed to withdraw from the spiritual community that had been the center of my life for 35 years. Long story short, the successor guru turned out to be somebody I wanted nothing to do with. Having read Ken Wilber, it really helped me understand what was going on there. Thank you, Ken Wilber. It would have been a lot more distressing for me if I hadn't had that Ken Wilber perspective on my very amber guru's spiritual teaching. Anyway, so I suddenly had all this free time and I wondered what to do with it and thought, oh, it might be a fun project to take those 5 pages of Embe stories from 25 years ago, try writing up as a mass market historical fantasy. Sounds like a fun project, right? That was naive. It took on a life of its own. Then it took over my life. And I've also described that in that essay, Not at All What I've Expected, on my website. It was also right around that time, 2015, that I started getting involved in the integral life community, which is, wow, it's been such a wonderful um, main supportive pole of my life. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about it, so I won't try. The conferences and, well, I will. The conferences and webinars, plus the network of personal friendships I've made since then, are at the core of what gives my life purpose and fulfillment. From 2015 to 2020, while the novel took over my life, synchronicities multiplied like never before in my life. It clearly was what the universe wanted me to be doing. And then a few months before the pandemic started, all the mojo went away, went underground, gone. So, okay, I guess I'm not supposed to be doing this. I got even more involved in the integral community, which has been fun, rewarding, and deeply satisfying. But in recent months, starting to think this time may be for this to come kind of go from the back burner to the front burner again. Synchronicities have been increasing. What is it? Okay. Yeah, I'll tell you one. This is probably the biggest, but a couple of years ago, I was rereading Jung's memoirs called Memories, Dreams, Reflections. Highly recommended. And I was reading the part in his midlife where he had a major breakdown, like for 3 years, when he parted ways with Freud, and he was almost completely incapacitated for 3 years. And while he was writing about this in his memoirs, he said that he had the sense that all of his creative energy was still there, but deep underground, bubbling away. It just was not accessible to his, surface personality. And I put the book down and wondered, oh, I wonder if that's true of my novel. And I am not kidding. As soon as I got through thinking that I wonder if that's true of my novel, I had the classical music station on in the background, and as soon as I finished the thought, a chorus came on, and this whole chorus singing, yes, 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 16 yeses. It is a composition, but I can't quite place the name because I've got senior memory, but it's a major contemporary classical composer. Um, and so it's like, and I have a copy of it now. And the course goes on 16. Yes, 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 yes. So okay, I guess that counts as a synchronicity. So I will begin to wrap up. Let's see, if you would like a brief sense of the novel's gist, you can read the other essay whose title I've posted in the chat box on my website. It's called Blood Moon. That's the core vision of my novel with a bit of a narrative wrap around. And Bet, thank you, Bet, has had so much fun. We've had fun illustrating it using AI. So it's got pictures. It's Embe's. I tried to imagine if High Priestess Embe, if a Stone Age priestess had been given a vision by the gods up the ages of humanity into integral. How would she cognize that? How would that translate itself into her awareness? And this essay is my attempt. I had fun with it. And it's my understanding of Wilber and spirituality, yada, yada. So if you want to look it up, there it is. What I have of the novel itself, I have 400 pages of draft. Second draft moving into third. I was moving from draft 2 into draft 3 when my mojo went underground. Half of those 400 pages are pretty solid. The other half is mostly notes to myself, but I have a well-polished first chapter. I've workshopped it 5 times. The 4th time I workshopped it, it won 3rd prize in the novel category contest at the yearly Mendocino Coast Writers Conference. A very large chunk in the middle that's nearly through written, and the last quarter of the story is very fully fleshed out, and that goes, gets wild spiritual. I have a lot of fun with that. Okay, so that's it for my presentation. I just want to say whether or not Embe's story really does go out into the wider world as a mass market novel, my main drive is to just work in our we space as a community to encourage all integral creative. Let's start telling some beautiful stories about our possible integral future. That's part of how we'll get us through. Let's let the world see that there's a light at the end of this tunnel. We are co-creating our future. What we think has real force, and this is not part of my prepared presentation. This is just what's coming out. what we do together is what matters. If my novel ever comes out as part of this, that's great. If it doesn't, that's great too, because it'll be a lot of work. But my passion is for what we can do together. So that ends my presentation. And with that, I
Wow.
turn it back over to you
To
folks.
me, to
Fantastic.
me.
Yeah.
Why don't we ask questions? Like, do people have questions or other, whatever people want to ask?
I I have a comment if that's okay.
Yeah,
That
please.
I'm excited. I'm excited about your book, and this is the reason I became a book coach, is to work with people who are wanting to make the world a better place in some way, and helping that to happen. Um, are you familiar with Taylor Caldwell's writings? Do you know who
No.
she is? She's a very famous when she was alive British author who writes historical novels. And when you read her books, you can the dust of the marketplace is on you. You can smell the smells. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Yes.
And when I first read about her, I hadn't read any of her books yet. I read a book where they regressed her hypnotically and discovered that all these time periods she wrote about were, in fact, past lives that she'd had, right? And she was doing it from memory. So I started reading her books, and honestly, you're there. You can feel you just she puts you right in that the action. But the thing about it that really like blew me away was that at the age of 12, she wrote a book about the sinking of Atlantis and the society that was happening there and what happened. And her parents were so um, freaked out about this manuscript. It was sexual, it had well beyond a 12-year-old's
Mm.
typical ability. So they took the manuscript and they just put it away somewhere. Well, when she finally became a famous author, she actually published this, but
Really?
it was a very, very obscure book. But the place that I lived had this amazing used bookstore. It had rooms and rooms and rooms and
Mm.
rooms. You just kept going on and on. And you had to go up ladders to see some of
Uh-huh.
them. And I found the Taylor Caldwell books way at the top of this. And I kept looking and didn't I find it? I have the book. I mean, I bet you and when I read it, I had to keep a 12-year-old wrote this, a 12 year
Yeah.
old wrote this.
Yeah.
But when I'm hearing you, it feels like that sort of um, amazingness to it,
Mhm.
of being able to go back to this time and being able to connect it to what happens and where we're
Wow.
going. And anyway, I'm excited about your book. And any way I can support you,
Thank you.
um, just count me in. That's all I'll say.
Great.
Count me in.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I'm going to have to
Mm-hmm.
get a copy of that because actually Atlantis does figure obliquely in because my heroine has a kind of a supernatural mentor who had a past life. He was one of the entities that sank Atlantis, and part of his karmic um, atonement is helping nurturing infant humanity. And he picks out my heroine and because she's got some psychic capacities, and he kind of basically takes her up the structure stages far beyond what her culture would have done, which is how she becomes high priestess. And I'm sorry to say that was part of my past life recall. Oh shit. I mean, this is scary. I mean, at this point, I'm treating it, at this point, the novel is a work of fiction. It's not the past. This has so many layers of what I've put into it cognitively. Uh, that it's kind of I get scared when I think of that part of it. But what happened, that was the first past life recall I ever had, and it was just really shocking. I mean, it really was like being electrocuted. It says so in my not at all what I expected. But after that, I started getting other kind of downloads and impressions. It kind of opened a door that hasn't closed. which has made life does not necessarily make life more easy. It does not make life easier, but it certainly makes it more interesting. But it's definitely affected how interconnected we all are. And then this is part of the message of Integral, how interconnected we all are with everything and everybody at every level. We've all done it all. We've all had it all done to us. We've seen it all. We've done it back. We're all in this together. Thank you. But
Anyone
part
else
Go
have
ahead.
questions? Anyone else have questions
or comments?
or comments?
I don't have a question. I just am super looking forward. I want you to finish this. Yes. I can't wait. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, one of one novel class I took from somebody who had an MCF, I forget what you call it, but they're said there are three phases of writing a creative novel. The first third is like you're just carried away, you're in love with it. You want to have your hands in it, you want to be dealing with it, you don't want to do anything else. Then there's a middle phase when the first phase wears off, and that's work, the hard working, the world building, the getting it coherent, getting it to a stage where other people can read it. And then you've got to start getting it into publication. And that's an aspect that I've also, during those 5 years, I thought this was what I was supposed to be doing. I started attending writers' workshops and took publishers, how you get books published. So as Jane knows, I still have a toe in that world. Getting an agent, do you want it, what route do you want to get things published? Because the publishing world has changed so much. There are so many avenues, and that's part of what I think this group, we can help each other with. It isn't just finding a big five publisher. There's so many other ways you can get your story out. But I think for this, a big four these days, big five publisher is the way I would need to go for this to reach what it's supposed to, which means going that last third and finding an agent, finding editors, going through a publishing house and doing that whole dance. And so part of that is making myself attractive to a mainstream publisher, which means being willing to appear in public, being willing to go out there and promote my book, having a platform. And this is one of the reasons I ended up joining the Integral Life community, because I was told, join communities of common interest where people who will be interested in what you're writing about. And I probably would not have gone to that first Integral conference if I hadn't had that advice under my belt. And I went to my first Integral conference in 2017, 2018, the What Now conference. And that changed my life. All of you, you wonderful people I've been hanging out with came as a direct consequence of going to that conference. So, and now just hang out with you people is number one. I mean, this is wow, just enjoy myself for the rest of my life. But what that means is I can go to a mainstream publisher and say, hey, I've got this Integral community, all of whom will be very interested in this book. So that's another thing that would make me attractive to a big five publisher once I get my draft to that stage.
Right.
So there are a lot of pieces to this, a lot of moving parts.
Yes.
Well, personally, Karen, I love reading autobiography. So I look forward to your
That should be another genre where it's a past life
Past life autobiographies. Oh my God.
Yes.
Well,
Back when I was a Viking.
I remember it well. One of the ways that I think we can support you is if we agreed to be beta readers for you, maybe, and then just giving you feedback on reading. And if something's not, I don't get what that is or whatever, it's helpful to have a set of eyes on it that are not in your head. I've discovered that about my own writing. It's like very helpful to have somebody go, I have no idea what you're talking about here. Well, how could you not? You're not in my head. Oh, that's why.
Yeah.
And I would be willing to do some beta reading with you.
Yeah, me
Thank
too.
you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And yes, and in fact, this is one of the ways I think we can begin to support each other in practical ways, is to set up like writing buddies is one way to do it. And this is where I have a specific skill set to offer, because I've been through a lot of writers' workshops. In fact, at one point I was thinking of writing an essay, writers' workshops, the good, the bad, the ugly, because we're not necessarily born knowing how to give feedback that's going to be helpful and constructive. It's most of us have to learn that, and some of us need to learn that. And this is something I have a lot of experience with. So just setting up those of us as we expand our circle in this particular support pod, we can set up like writing buddies, people who are writing comparable things, so that and this is something in the world of professional writers, it's just something you do. You have a writing buddy. You pop your thing out, your beta version out to somebody. And get the feedback. How did this land on you? What's working, what isn't working? And I can help coach people. I don't have professional training, but a lot of experience. I can help coach people into how to give that kind of feedback. And we can set up people with each other to give that kind of feedback and practice, because this is something one of my really, really great teachers said: every writer, even the very best in the world, has blind spots. By definition, we cannot see our own blind spots. And this is why in the world of mainstream publishing, up until the digital revolution, the publishing houses would have their in-house editors who would do sometimes just have you massively rewrite. These days, that's more on us. If we're going to go to a publishing house, we need to hire I think they're called dev editors, development editors. And more we're expected to hire them ourselves. But up to a certain degree, we can be doing that for each other. Where is this working? Where isn't this working? That threw this place here threw me out of the story. Oh, but in this place here, I was really in the story, and so on. I'd like to see a whole network of us doing this for each other. Now, for technical things that are not fiction, it's a slightly different skill set. But this isn't just for fiction. This is for nonfiction too, like William's book, 6 Dimensions of Purpose.
So, Karen, I'm wondering, since this is not just a book about entertainment, it's an educational book. It's a book about the future, actually, and how life evolves, how society evolves.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, to what extent are you really making that explicit? And is that something that is truly built into, so I mean, readers actually truly get it? And I'm wondering about the fellow from Atlantis, if he couldn't be the spokesperson who sort of predicts, this is how things are going to turn out, or this is the way that things go, this is the way that nature unfolds, the universe unfolds, or something like that. So along with the fascinating dramatic story is this truly educational component that people will get.
Yeah, that's all very much already kind of hardwired in. She has a personal vision. Her mentor, he has his flaws too. I mean, he's still on a learning trajectory himself. But she, the climax of the novel, she has to decide whether she's going to go back to her body or not, and finish those last 2 days of the ceremony. Right. And of course, when she starts, I'm gonna spill the beans to you folks. That's the core decision that amplifies. When she leaves the body on page 2, there's no way in hell she's going back there. But then, as the story goes on, and you see her embodied life, and then her perspective on it from the point of view of her past life recall, and she's seeing a larger context, right? And she's getting to the point where, okay, now she's got to finally, at the climax, make the decision to go back to her body, and she cannot bear to think about it. But then she's blasted up. She's been in 4 dimensions. Now she's blasted up into 5 by some higher powers, and she sees the historical trajectory. which will be a much more condensed version of that second. I've put up the blood moon that Bet has illustrated. That is an expanded version of her vision. It's the climax of it's going to be much more compact in the novel, but we will have had like 350 pages for people to absorb kind of the general sense of what's at stake here. So she's going to be blessed with a vision up the ages, and of course she decides to go back to her body, and then of course that's the last 2 chapters, which are really because she's in the astral and in her body at the same time, and she's overlapping. So yes, that's kind of the core of it. As to, but I'm hoping that it's going to be the people who are reading it at a deeper level who see this. I really want it to be just something people can pick up and go, wow, that was a fun read, and not think about it very hard. But the people who can see it more than one level, it will be there. And if I do my job, I mean, I remember one of the things I learned is with fiction, you can get away with anything if you set up for it well enough. So if I set up for it well enough along the way, and that's what my beta readers will be helping me with, then when the whammy comes, go, whoa, awesome. Yeah, that was a good read. Wow. Yeah. Hey, we really could go there. So if you do take the trouble to read Blood Moon, that's a much expanded. The point of that was to really articulate the vision for myself so that I can do a condensed, streamlined version in the book, and it'll be really smooth. So yeah, that's on track.
So Karen, not to put deadlines on you or anything, but when could we get a beta copy of this so we can start reading it? Like in a year, next week?
No. It depends on what happens this year. This year, the rest of this year is going to be about the support pod and my activities in the integral group. At the end of the year, see, I don't make the decision whether the mojo comes back above ground. I can send out signals like HTTP, hypertext transfer protocol. You ping back and forth before you squirt the main message through. I can send messages into the deep creative spaces in my deep psyche beyond my personal control, but it's got to come back up. And this year will tell me whether it will come back up, and I suspect it will. Because I mean, like that, yes, synchronicity, starting to get some pings back, but I will need I will need support for this stage of it. And so building, like I said to you, Bet, with these support pods, building the playground I want to play in.
Yay. Okay,
Building
so
the
Karen,
playground is my passion now.
If
I cannot give you a date.
If next year is when we're going to be doing this, 2026, is there anything we can do now to support you? Is there anything we can log off today and be like, oh, Karen, just sending you vibes? What can we do for you today, Karen?
What you can do for me today, well, I mean, if you'd enjoy reading my stuff, you can read that. But I think today, really for the rest of this year, building the support pods, because building the platform that I will need to go online, building the platform, and then next year, open the floodgates.
Okay, so let's get some really practical tips for Karen if she has a full year minus maybe 3 months. Is there other things she can be doing, Jane, that can really help her build the audience, get out there, start getting followers?
Well, there are. I mean, typically things like blogging or, starting to build up your platform. And I'm not the right person to be telling you to do this because it's something I avoid like the plague, but I know it to be a very important part of this. As you said, back in the day when there were just the big publishing companies, you didn't have to worry about what kind of platform you had. These days,
right.
If you go to an agent or a publisher with no platform or very little, they'll tell you, you got to do that. And so even just, getting a Substack account going, start doing blogs on this, start getting, and, start with one. I was just reading a thing where they said, people read your blogs one at a time. So, one person, your books get read one at a time. And so it's a very intimate thing between writer and reader. Though we want X number of readers, we're speaking to each reader one at a time. And so you start small and you just keep on going. It's the consistency that matters. And it's the
Okay.
engagement. The other thing is engagement. It's one thing to say, I have this many followers. How much engagement do you have with those followers? Oh, I don't know. No, how much back and forth? How often do you get people talking about this? And so those are a couple
Okay.
of things that you can just sneak into. You don't have to, you don't have to dive in, but that's a good
Okay.
beginning.
Actually, this does bring up something. Thank you, Bet, and thank you, Jane, because back during the 5 years where this took over my life, I was going to start a blog. Mbe, my best BFF, my best friend forever from 11,000 years ago, with her snarky comments on current events from her Stone Age point of view. And, things weren't so dire then. But maybe, Bet, if you're up for it after Embodied Integral, and you and I have already talked about, get a blog started. That might be the premise to revive Mbe. Makes her snarky Stone Age comments on our current events. You people
Substack
are
is
living in the happy hunting grounds.
Substack is a really good platform because a lot of writers are there. So you're writing for writers, and someone was already on Substack. William, are you on there?
Yeah.
Or there was
It's
someone else.
Gary.
Gary
Gary.
Shumway.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a good avenue.
Okay. So Bet, we'll talk after the Embodied Integral Conference.
We could talk on the plane even. Or flying together.
We're flying together.
Nice.
Cool. All right. Well, we're about
Awesome.
time. I just want to do a little plug for next week's support pod. I am presenting on a book that I wrote with heavy quotes in 12 days. Wilbur takes a whole
Wow.
month. He's so passe. I took 12 days, and I might talk about how I did that, which is a very interesting method. I have a PDF and I have an audio version of this book and a bunch of meditations that I've created.
Nice.
Yeah, it's called Embodied Product, and it's all about how to use embodied wisdom to launch and brainstorm a product or service. So it could be an app, or it could be some kind of physical device, something that you're trying to figure out, how to do it. So anyways, it's very exciting, and I'm going to be talking about that, and I'm going to be leading us through a chakra meditation. I'm doing that at the support pod, and then I'm also speaking at a San Diego Integral on the March 22nd on that chakra meditation of really trying to figure out in your body, where's this wisdom, and talking about discomfort and how products come from discomfort, which is like, we've known that forever, right? In necessity is a mother of invention. Well, if you avoid the discomfort by drinking alcohol or taking drugs or something, you're not going to find out what that innovation is.
Yeah.
So that's very much part of the workshop I'm doing at Embodied Integral. That's called Using Discomfort for Personal Growth. So this is just using discomfort for product innovation. So anyways, that's a plug for next week. It's same time. Monday,
next Monday, or
yep,
it's not the next month for us.
No.
Okay,
I haven't even thought about what's happening in April because I can't. If anyone else has ideas for April support pod, please come and let me know. But otherwise, I am not going to be worrying about it, and I'd be happy to cancel it. But if someone else has ideas,
maybe.
But no, this is the regular support pod, which is the third Monday of every month at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah. Karen?
For the our writers support pod, do we want to try to get together for an after the Embodied Integral and what happened with Marco Morelli and any other connections we made?
If you want to help Karen, like really spearhead it, I probably will be dead.
Yeah.
And then I am also going on a little vacation for my birthday. But yeah. So anyways, Karen, we can chat about that, or if Jane, if you want to take the lead. on running something in April. I know I'm probably going to be mentally bankrupt, so probably
Yeah,
won't be doing
yeah,
much.
you'll be
but
exhausted.
yeah. All right. Well, everyone, this has been the Creative Writers Support Pod for ILiA. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank
Right.
you. Bye.